A little while ago, I made a video about Jaguar trying to reinvent itself. It raised a much bigger question than I expected. Because if you are going to reinvent an icon, you first have to understand what made it iconic. Hello there, enthusiasts. Vance here. Although, before we begin, I'd just like to congratulate everyone who's confidently pronounced Pugio. French seems to have signed a peace treaty with half the alphabet. Anyway, Jaguar. The funny thing is, my story with these two cars happened backwards. The first Jaguar XJ I ever photographed wasn't the one that started it all. It was one of the last, the X351. I saw it back in 2018 and remember thinking, that's a seriously elegant car. At the time, it was simply an interesting car I'd spotted on an ordinary day. I had no idea it would eventually lead me back to where the story began. Then 2 years later, I came across something I never expected to see, a Series 1 XJ, the very car that gave the XJ its identity. That got me thinking. These two cars wear the same badge, carry the same name, yet they are trying to do two very different things. One became the benchmark every future XJ will be measured against. The other had the difficult job of proving the XJ still belonged in a changing world. And I think the fact that both of these cars are still on the road says something. Cars like this don't survive because they got lucky. They survive because someone decided they were worth keeping. So, let's start with a car that made the name XJ worth carrying in the first place. The first time I saw a Series 1 XJ, I already knew what the newer XJ looked like. So seeing the car that started it all felt strangely familiar, even if I'd never seen one in person before. You can immediately tell they are related. The long bonnet, the low stance, the effortless sense of proportion. The way it somehow manages to look elegant without trying too hard. It didn't take long to understand why this became the Jaguar. Back in the late 1960s, it wasn't just another luxury saloon, it became the blueprint. The car every future XJ would inevitably be measured against. That's a difficult legacy to leave behind. The more I looked at it, the more I realized Jaguar hadn't just designed a beautiful car. They created a template, one that will shape the XJ for decades to come. And that's probably why the XJ changed so little for so long. When you get something this right, you don't rush to start over. You refine it, generation after generation, carefully preserving what people had fallen in love with, while quietly improving everything else. But eventually, even the strongest blueprint reaches a point where refinement isn't enough. Sooner or later, someone has to decide whether to protect the legacy or risk redefining it. For decades, Jaguar kept refining the XJ. Each new generation evolved the formula without ever abandoning it, which sounds like a compliment until one day it became a challenge. The luxury car world was changing. Buyers expected something bolder, something more modern. Jaguar could either keep refining a design people already admired or take the risk of redefining what an XJ could be. Eventually, they chose the second option. That decision gave us the X351, the car that carried one of Jaguar's greatest names into a completely different era. Looking back, that photograph I took in 2018 means something very different now. At the time, I thought I'd simply found an elegant Jaguar. Years later, I realized I'd photographed the next chapter before I'd even seen the first. A new shape was one thing, but if this was going to be called an XJ, it needed more than a pretty face. It needed the performance to match. The original XJ built its reputation with silky smooth split sixes. Then came the V12. Not because Jaguar wanted to shout the loudest, but because it believed luxury and performance didn't have to compete. The best Grand Tourers made speed feel almost effortless. The X351 carried that philosophy into a different era. The styling became bolder, the technology became smarter, and under the bonnet, the range stretched from refined V6s to a supercharged V8 capable of embarrassing cars with far fewer seats. Jaguar even explored a V10 powered XJ. Yes, a V10 luxury saloon. Unfortunately, it never made it beyond the prototype stage. Some ideas remain what ifs, others somehow escape and become the Volkswagen Touareg. Through all those changes, one thing never really disappeared. The XJ was still expected to do something that sounds almost contradictory: be a comfortable luxury saloon that genuinely enjoyed being driven. And that's a balancing act Jaguar spent decades trying to perfect. The difficult thing about redesigning an icon is that people rarely judge it on its own. They compare it to the car that came before. And in the X351's case, that was always going to happen. Some people admired the fact that Jaguar finally took a chance. Others looked at it and wondered where the traditional Jaguar had gone. Honestly, both reactions make sense. When a design becomes iconic, it stops being just a design. It becomes part of people's expectations. And expectations are much harder to redesign than sheet metal. The X351 wasn't trying to make everyone happy. It was trying to make sure the XJ still had a future. Because standing still might keep your existing fans, but it rarely earns you new ones. Looking back now, that's what makes these two cars so fascinating. The Series 1 created the legend. The X351 accepted the most impossible job of following it. And whether you prefer the old one or the new one, they are both chasing the same idea. You don't reinvent an icon by pretending the old one never existed. You reinvent it by understanding what made people care in the first place. So, whether it's the Series 1 or the X351, they both remind us that some cars are remembered for far more than getting people from A to B. They leave a story behind, and sometimes the story turns out to be much bigger than the car itself. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing. You never really know what's going to show up next. Sometimes it's a forgotten classic, sometimes it's a luxury saloon, sometimes it's a single badge that quietly turns into an entire documentary.